Let me ask you something. What if everything you thought you knew about confidence was completely, utterly wrong? What if the very strategies you have been using to feel more self-assured were actually the things holding you back? I know that sounds dramatic, but stick with me here, because by the end of this, your entire understanding of what it means to be confident is going to shift in a way you never expected. Most people walk around thinking confidence is about pumping yourself up in front of a mirror, reciting feel-good mantras, and forcing a power pose before a big meeting. They think it is about believing you are amazing, even when everything inside you screams otherwise. And look, I get the appeal. It sounds nice. It sounds empowering. But here is the uncomfortable truth. That is not confidence. That is theater. Real confidence, the kind that makes people sit up and pay attention when you walk into a room, the kind that changes your career, your relationships, your entire life trajectory, that kind of confidence is something else entirely. It is not a feeling. It is a knowing. It is walking into a room full of strangers and feeling this quiet, unshakable certainty that whatever happens, you have got the tools to handle it. Not because you memorized some script or rehearsed your handshake in the mirror, but because you have built something solid inside yourself. Something that does not crack under pressure. And here is the part that might surprise you the most. Confidence is not some magical gift that certain people are born with and others are not. It is not coded into your DNA. It is not something that was handed out at birth while you were standing in the wrong line. Confidence is a skill, a trainable, buildable, systematic skill that works according to real psychological principles. And once you understand those principles and start applying them, you do not just get a little more confident. You become what I call dangerously confident. The kind of person who shifts the energy in a room just by showing up. The kind of person who speaks and others genuinely listen. The kind of person that people instinctively trust and want to follow. By the time you finish reading this, confidence will never look the same to you again. You're going to learn the real science behind unshakable self-assurance. You're going to understand why most of what the self-help world has taught you about confidence is not just incomplete, but actively working against you. And you're going to walk away with a step-by-step blueprint for building the kind of deep-rooted confidence that actually sticks when life gets hard. But fair warning, this is not surface-level stuff. This is not for people who want a quick pep talk and a pat on the back. This is for people who are genuinely ready to transform the way they move through the world. People who want to operate on a level that most will never reach. If that is you, let us get into it. Chapter 1. The confidence trap that keeps you stuck. Before we build anything, we need to tear something down first, and that something is the mountain of myths you have been fed about what confidence actually is. Because here is the thing, if you are working from a broken blueprint, it does not matter how hard you try. Every tool, every technique, every strategy will fall flat. And worse, it will leave you feeling even more frustrated and inadequate than before. The personal development world has sold you a handful of confidence myths that sound beautiful on paper, but crumble the second you test them in real life. And these myths are the exact reason so many smart, capable people are still stuck feeling unsure of themselves. Myth number 1. You can think your way into confidence with positive affirmations. This one drives me absolutely crazy. The idea that you can stand in front of a mirror, tell yourself you are a winner 50 times in a row, and suddenly feel like a new person is not just wrong. It is psychologically backwards. Here is what actually happens when you try to convince yourself of something your gut knows is not true. Your subconscious mind catches the lie immediately. It is like trying to deposit a fake check at the bank. The system rejects it. And instead of feeling more confident, you end up in this weird internal tug of war where one part of you is chanting affirmations and the other part is whispering, "Who are you kidding?" That internal conflict does not build confidence. It erodes it. It is like trying to glue together a broken vase with water. You're making the problem worse, not better. Real confidence is not built on words. It is built on evidence. It is built on a track record of showing up, doing hard things, and surviving. Your deeper mind does not give a damn about your affirmations. It cares about receipts. It wants proof. It wants to see that you actually handled that tough conversation, survived that rejection, pushed through that moment of terror. When you try to shortcut this process with happy thoughts, you are building your house on a sand dune during hurricane season, the first real storm, and the whole thing comes crashing down. Myth number 2, truly confident people never feel scared. This one is sneaky because it sounds logical. You look at someone who seems supremely confident, someone who commands a boardroom or owns a stage, and you think, they must not feel nervous. They must have figured out how to turn off the fear. But that is a fantasy. Every genuinely confident person I have ever met or studied feels fear. They feel butterflies. They feel their palms sweat. They feel that knot in their stomach before big moments. The difference is they do not let those feelings drive the car. They have learned something that changes everything. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is taking action while the fear is still screaming at you to stop. Think of it like swimming in cold water. Confident people do not wait for the water to warm up. They jump in knowing it is going to be cold and trust themselves to adjust. When you believe that confident people are fearless, you set a trap for yourself. Because the moment you feel nervous before a presentation or anxious before a date, you think, "See, I am not confident. Something is wrong with me. I need to fix myself before I can take action." And so you wait, and wait, and wait for this magical day when the fear disappears and confidence shows up in its place. But that day never comes. The fear never fully leaves. It just gets quieter as you prove to yourself over and over that you can handle what is on the other side. Myth number 3, confidence means believing in yourself. Okay, I know this one sounds almost heretical to challenge. Believe in yourself is plastered on every motivational poster ever made. But here is why this advice, while well-intentioned, actually creates more pressure than progress. When someone tells you to believe in yourself, the unspoken message is, you should already feel capable. You should already feel ready. You should already have it all figured out. And if you do not, well, then clearly something is wrong with you. But what if you do not feel capable yet? What if you genuinely do not know if you can pull it off? What if you are facing something you have never done before? Real confidence is not about believing you already have all the answers. It is about trusting your ability to figure things out along the way. It is saying, I do not know exactly how this is going to unfold, but I know I'm resourceful enough to navigate whatever comes. That is a completely different energy. One demands you already be the finished product. The other gives you permission to be a work in progress. One creates paralyzing pressure. The other creates liberating momentum. Myth number 4, fake it until you make it. If there is one piece of confidence advice I wish I could permanently erase from the collective consciousness, it is this one. Fake it till you make it sounds clever, but it is a psychological time bomb. When you are faking confidence, you are in a constant state of low-grade stress. You are performing. You are monitoring yourself every second. Am I standing right? Is my voice deep enough? Are they buying this? That level of self-monitoring is exhausting, and ironically, it is the exact opposite of what confidence actually feels like. Real confidence is what psychologists call unconscious competence. It is being so grounded in who you are that you are not even thinking about it. You are just present and engaged, handling whatever comes up naturally. Faking confidence, on the other hand, is conscious incompetence, wearing a costume. You know you do not feel it, and you're working overtime to make sure nobody notices. And people do notice. Maybe not consciously, but they sense something is off. There is a stiffness, a forced quality that triggers subtle alarm bells. In others, they might not be able to name it, but they feel it, and that undermines the very thing you are trying to create. Here is the thread that connects all four of these myths. They all focus on managing how you feel instead of building what you actually are. They are all about symptom management instead of root cause treatment. They are all about looking confident instead of being confident. And that is a crucial distinction, because true confidence is not about how you feel on any given Tuesday morning. It is about who you have become through the challenges you have faced, the skills you have built, and the evidence you have collected about your own capability. It is not about feeling invincible. It is about being genuinely competent and knowing it in your bones. Chapter 2. What your brain is actually doing when you feel confident or insecure. All right, now that we have cleared the wreckage of those myths, let us talk about what is actually happening inside your head when you feel confident or when you do not. Because confidence is not just some abstract concept or emotional state. It is a real, measurable neurological process with patterns you can understand and, more importantly, deliberately influence. Your brain has two main players in the confidence game. Think of them as two different operating systems running simultaneously. The first is your limbic system, your emotional brain. This is the ancient, primal part that has been around for millions of years. It is fast, powerful, and its primary job is keeping you alive. It scans for threats, triggers your fight or flight response, and floods your system with stress chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline the moment it senses danger. The second is your prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain. This is the newer, more sophisticated part. It handles complex reasoning, planning, creative problem-solving, and decision-making. It is slower, but it is where your highest intelligence lives. Here is the problem. When your limbic system decides something is a threat, it essentially hijacks your brain. It dumps stress hormones into your bloodstream, your heart rate spikes, your breathing gets shallow, and your prefrontal cortex starts going offline. You literally lose access to your best thinking. You become reactive instead of strategic, clumsy instead of sharp, defensive instead of calm. And here's the kicker. Your limbic system cannot tell the difference between a genuine physical threat and a social one. It does not know the difference between a hungry predator and a job interview. It does not distinguish between a charging bull and a difficult conversation with your boss. To your ancient brain, the potential for social rejection or public humiliation triggers the same survival alarms as a life-threatening situation. This is why you can feel genuinely terrified walking into a cocktail party. This is why your hands shake before a presentation, even though nobody is going to physically harm you. Your ancient operating system is treating a networking event like a jungle ambush. So what happens when someone has dangerous confidence? Their brain has learned through repeated experience that these social and professional situations are not actual threats. Their limbic system stays relatively calm, which means their prefrontal cortex stays fully online. They can think clearly under pressure. They can communicate effectively when stakes are high. They can make sharp decisions when everyone else is panicking. The magic word here is neuroplasticity. Your brain is not a fixed machine. It is constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences, like a city that is always under construction, building new roads and closing old ones based on traffic patterns. Every time you face a challenge and come through it okay, your brain builds new neural pathways that essentially say, "This type of situation, we can handle it." And every time you avoid a challenge or let fear win, you reinforce pathways that say, "This is dangerous. Retreat." This is exactly why exposure therapy works so powerfully for anxiety and phobias. When you face something you fear again and again in a controlled way, your brain gradually rewrites its threat assessment. The alarm bells get quieter. The stress response gets weaker. Eventually, what used to terrify you barely registers. The same principle governs confidence building. Every time you do something that makes you uncomfortable and survive, you are literally rewiring your brain for confidence at the neurological level. And this is a crucial but, most people go about this completely wrong. They think they need to cannonball into the deep end. They think the solution to social anxiety is immediately signing up for a TED Talk, or the cure for professional insecurity is volunteering to lead the company's biggest project. This approach usually backfires spectacularly. If you are terrified of public speaking and you force yourself onto a stage in front of 500 people, the experience is so overwhelming that it actually reinforces your fear instead of dissolving it. Your brain files it under, "See, I told you this was dangerous," and your confidence takes a hit rather than a leap. The real secret is what researchers call progressive exposure. You start at the edge of your comfort zone, not miles past it. You take on challenges that make your heart beat a little faster, but do not send you into full panic mode. You get comfortable there, then nudge the boundary a little further. Then a little further. Imagine it like adjusting to cold water. You do not belly flop into an ice bath. You wade in gradually, letting your body adjust at each depth. Before you know it, you are swimming comfortably in water that would have shocked your system if you had jumped straight in. This works because of a process called stress inoculation. Small, repeated doses of manageable stress actually toughen your nervous system. Your baseline resilience increases. Things that used to overwhelm you become routine. Challenges that used to freeze you start to feel energizing. There is another fascinating piece to this puzzle: mirror neurons. These are specialized brain cells that fire both when you do something and when you watch someone else do it. They are how babies learn to smile by watching their parents. They are how we unconsciously absorb the emotional states of people around us. Mirror neurons are why confidence is contagious. When you spend time around genuinely confident people, your brain starts mirroring their patterns. Their calm becomes your calm. Their certainty starts to feel like your certainty. This is not woo-woo mysticism. This is hard neuroscience. It also works in reverse, which is why spending all your time around anxious, insecure people tends to amplify your own insecurity. You are literally catching their emotional state through your mirror neuron system. The practical takeaway here is massive. If you want to build dangerous confidence, you need to immerse yourself in environments where that level of confidence is the norm. Study confident people. Not just casually observe them, but really analyze how they think, how they move, how they handle pressure, how they respond to challenges. Your mirror neurons will start absorbing those patterns automatically. And here is an advanced move. You can use this same mechanism through visualization. When you vividly imagine yourself behaving confidently, your mirror neurons fire as if you're actually doing it. This is why mental rehearsal is so powerful for athletes and performers. They are programming their neural circuitry for success before the actual event. The last piece of the neurological puzzle is dopamine. Most people think of dopamine as the pleasure chemical, but that is not quite right. It is actually the anticipation chemical. It surges when you expect something good to happen, and it plays a huge role in confidence and motivation. When you have a history of winning, your brain starts expecting positive outcomes. This triggers dopamine, which makes you feel motivated and confident about the next challenge. But when your history is mostly avoidance or failure, your brain expects negative outcomes. Dopamine stays low, motivation dries up, insecurity becomes your default setting. This is why building a chain of small victories matters so much. Every win, no matter how small, trains your brain to expect success. You are literally rewiring your dopamine system to default to confidence and motivation instead of doubt and hesitation. The compound effect of this over weeks and months is staggering. Chapter 3. Installing a new confidence operating system. Now that you understand the neuroscience, it is time to get practical. We are not talking about tips and tricks here. We are talking about installing a completely new operating system in your brain, one that automatically generates confidence regardless of the situation. Think of it like upgrading from an old glitchy computer to a machine that runs everything smoothly, no matter what you throw at it. This operating system has 4 core components: competence architecture, social awareness, emotional mastery, and presence engineering. Each one builds on the others, and together they create a foundation of confidence that nothing can shake. Competence architecture is the bedrock, and honestly, it is the most misunderstood part of the whole equation. Most people try to build confidence by working on their mindset or self-esteem, reading motivational quotes, journaling about their strengths, trying to think their way to self-assurance. But that is building the roof before pouring the foundation. Real confidence comes from real ability. It comes from actually being good at things that matter, from having genuine skills you can lean on when things get tough. Your subconscious mind cannot argue with competence. When you know from direct experience that you are genuinely capable, confidence is not something you have to manufacture. It just shows up on its own. Here is how competence architecture works in practice. First, you identify the specific areas of your life where confidence matters most. Maybe it is your professional life. Maybe it is social situations. Maybe it is leadership, romantic relationships, or public speaking. For each area, you map out the specific skills that confident people in that domain actually possess. Let us say you want more confidence at work. You break it down: effective communication, strategic thinking, conflict navigation, presenting ideas clearly, building professional relationships, deep expertise in your field. These are the actual building blocks. You do not try to develop all of them at once. That is a recipe for overwhelm. You pick one, the one that would make the biggest immediate difference, and you go deep on it. You practice deliberately until you reach genuine competence. Then you move to the next one. The beauty of this approach is its specificity. Instead of this vague, overwhelming goal of be more confident at work, you have a concrete target. Become genuinely excellent at presenting ideas clearly. That is something you can actually work on, measure progress toward, and feel real improvement in. And as each skill develops, your confidence in that environment naturally rises because it is based on something real. The same logic applies to social confidence. Instead of trying to become generically more socially confident, you identify specific capabilities: reading body language accurately, starting conversations with ease, telling stories that hold attention, navigating group dynamics smoothly. You develop each one systematically, and social confidence emerges as a natural byproduct of genuine ability. Social awareness is the second component. This is your ability to walk into any room and quickly read what is actually going on beneath the surface. Who has influence? What are the unspoken dynamics? Where is the tension? What is everyone really thinking but not saying? Most people who struggle with confidence have surprisingly poor social awareness. They are either completely oblivious to social dynamics or so consumed by worrying about how they are being perceived that they cannot pay attention to anything else. Both of these keep you stuck in reactive mode, always a step behind. Dangerous confidence requires sharp social awareness. You need to notice who speaks first in a meeting and how others respond. You need to see who people glance at before making a decision. You need to pick up on the subtle shift in energy when a sensitive topic comes up. You need to understand not just what someone is saying, but what they are actually communicating. This develops through practice and focused attention. Start paying closer attention to social dynamics in everyday interactions. Watch how people position themselves in groups. Notice patterns in how conversations flow, how decisions get made, how influence gets exercised. Study people who radiate confidence and authority. Observe how they enter spaces, how they use their voice, how they handle disagreement, how they command attention without demanding it. The goal is to develop such refined social intelligence that uncertainty, the breeding ground of insecurity, gets replaced by clarity. When you can walk into any room and quickly understand the landscape, most of the anxiety that feeds insecurity simply evaporates. Emotional mastery is the third pillar. This is your ability to manage your internal state regardless of what is happening around you. Most people's confidence is a weather vane spinning with every emotional breeze. If they feel good, they are confident. If they feel anxious, the confidence vanishes. If someone gives them a compliment, they are on top of the world. If someone looks at them sideways, they spiral. Dangerous confidence means your internal state is largely independent of your environment. You feel centered whether you are being praised or challenged. You stay composed whether things are going perfectly or falling apart. You remain clear-headed whether you are on familiar ground or completely out of your depth. This does not mean suppressing emotions. It means feeling them fully without letting them control your actions. You can feel nervous and still speak with authority. You can feel uncertain and still make decisions. You can feel the heat of pressure and still perform with composure. Emotional mastery develops through three primary channels. First, breath control. Your breathing is the fastest, most direct way to influence your nervous system. Deep, slow, diaphragmatic breathing activates your parasympathetic system, the calm and clear thinking mode. It is like having a volume knob for anxiety. Second, cognitive reframing. This is the practice of changing the story you tell yourself about what is happening. A challenge becomes an opportunity. Criticism becomes feedback. Failure becomes data. Third, gradual exposure to emotionally charged situations so you build tolerance and control over time. Presence engineering is the fourth and most advanced component. This is your ability to influence how other people experience you and the entire dynamic of a situation through your energy, your communication, and simply being in the room. When you master presence engineering, you do not just respond to social situations, you shape them. You do not adapt to the energy around you, you set it. This might sound like manipulation, but it is the opposite. It is about taking full responsibility for the energy you bring into every room. It is about being so clear about who you are and what you stand for that people naturally orient themselves around your frame of reference. Presence is what emerges when the other three components integrate. Genuine competence plus sharp social awareness plus emotional mastery equals a magnetic quality that cannot be faked or manufactured. People feel it immediately. They are drawn to it. They are trust it. They follow it. Chapter 4. The War Inside Your Head and How to Win It. Let me tell you something that might change the way you think about self-doubt forever. Self-doubt is not just an annoying voice in your head. It is a full-blown psychological warfare operation, and your own brain is running it against you, using sophisticated tactics that would make any military strategist nod in approval. Understanding this changes the game entirely, because you cannot fight an enemy you do not understand. And until you see exactly how self-doubt operates, until you can name its weapons and recognize its playbook, you will keep losing battles you should be winning. Here is where it starts. Self-doubt is not some rational calculation. It is not your brain calmly weighing the evidence and concluding that you are not good enough. Self-doubt is an ancient emotional defense system, a psychological early warning alarm that evolved thousands of years ago when being rejected by your tribe was not just embarrassing, but literally fatal. Back in our ancestral environment, social exile meant death. No tribe, no protection, no food, no survival. So your brain developed exquisitely sensitive threat detectors for anything that might lead to rejection or social failure. The problem is that these detectors are now wildly miscalibrated for modern life. Your brain still treats a stumbled presentation like it treats a saber-toothed cat sighting. It still responds to the possibility of looking foolish in a meeting like it is a matter of survival. And that is why self-doubt feels so intense, so visceral, so real. It is not just an inconvenient thought. It is your survival instincts firing in situations that are about as life-threatening as a rainy Tuesday. Self-doubt has 5 primary weapons in its arsenal, and once you learn to recognize them, they lose most of their power over you. The first weapon is catastrophic thinking. This is when your mind grabs the worst possible outcome and presents it to you with the conviction of a news anchor, reporting live from a disaster zone. You have a job interview tomorrow, and your brain immediately fast-forwards to a montage of horror. You blank on every question. Your voice cracks. The interviewer looks at you with visible pity. You never get hired anywhere ever again. You end up selling lemonade on a street corner. Your brain does not present these as possibilities. It presents them as previews of coming attractions. This kind of thinking is not preparation, it is sabotage. Every minute you spend catastrophizing is a minute you are programming your brain to expect failure. You are essentially rehearsing for a disaster, and your nervous system does not know the difference between vivid imagination and actual experience. You are creating anxiety about events that exist only in your imagination. The second weapon is mind reading. This is your brain's unhelpful habit of assuming it knows exactly what other people are thinking about you. And shockingly, it always assumes they are thinking something terrible. You walk into a meeting and your colleague does not smile at you. Instantly, your brain whispers, "They are annoyed with you." You crack a joke at dinner and someone does not laugh. Your brain declares they think you are an idiot. You share an idea in a brainstorm and someone pauses before responding. They think your idea is garbage. Here is the reality. You have absolutely no clue what other people are thinking. None. Zero. Most of the time, people are not thinking about you at all. They are thinking about their own deadlines, their own arguments with their partners, their own anxieties about their own performance. The colleague who did not smile. She was thinking about whether she fed the cat this morning. The person who did not laugh at your joke, he was distracted by a text from his ex. Your brain is writing elaborate fiction about other people's internal monologues, and none of it is journalism. The third weapon is fortune-telling. This is when your brain predicts negative outcomes with absolute certainty, as if it has a crystal ball, and the crystal ball only shows bad news. Do not apply for that promotion. You will not get it. Do not ask her out. She will say no. Do not start that business. You will fail. These predictions are not wisdom. They are prophecies designed to keep you safe by keeping you small. And they are devastatingly effective because they create self-fulfilling cycles. When you decide in advance that you will fail, you either do not try at all, or you try with the enthusiasm of someone filling out their tax return. Either way, the failure you predicted becomes the failure you created. The fourth weapon is the blame magnet. This is your tendency to take personal responsibility for things that have nothing to do with you. A friend seems distant. I must have done something wrong. A project does not go well? It is my fault, even though 20 other factors were involved. A conversation feels awkward. I am socially defective. This weapon gives you a strange sense of control. If everything is your fault, at least you understand why things go wrong. But the cost is enormous. You carry unnecessary guilt, relentless self-blame, and a constant sense that you are the common denominator in every failure around you. The truth is that most of what happens around you has very little to do with you. People have their own storms, their own seasons, their own stories playing out independently of anything you said or did. The fifth weapon is all-or-nothing thinking. This is your brain's addiction to extremes. You are either a total genius or a complete moron. Your presentation was either flawless or a disaster. You are either the most charming person in the room or an invisible wallflower. No middle ground, no shades of gray, no room for being human. This kind of thinking sets impossible standards, and impossible standards guarantee failure. Nobody performs perfectly all the time. Nobody gets it right in every conversation. Nobody nails every presentation. When you demand perfection from yourself, you create a system where anything less than perfect becomes evidence of inadequacy. And since perfection is unattainable, you are essentially designing a machine that produces insecurity on an industrial scale. Now, these weapons are effective because they each contain a tiny grain of truth. Sometimes things do go wrong. Sometimes people do judge you. Sometimes you are partially responsible for a negative outcome. But self-doubt takes these occasional realities and inflates them into absolute truths. It turns isolated incidents into universal laws. It makes sometimes into always. So how do you fight back? The first counterweapon is what psychologists call cognitive diffusion. This is the practice of putting space between yourself and your thoughts. Instead of thinking, I am going to bomb this presentation, you learn to notice, I am having the thought that I am going to bomb this presentation. That small linguistic shift is surprisingly powerful. It reminds you that you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are just mental events, like clouds passing through the sky. Some are accurate, many are not. You do not have to take any of them as gospel. The second counter-weapon is demanding evidence. When your mind tells you something negative, you become a prosecutor. Everyone thinks I am incompetent. Really? What specific evidence do you have for that claim? Name one person who told you directly that they think you are incompetent. This business idea will definitely fail. Based on what data exactly? What market research? What comparable failures? What specific analysis supports this conclusion? 9 times out of 10, when you demand evidence for your negative thoughts, you discover there is none. They are emotional reactions dressed up in the costume of rational analysis. When you consistently call their bluff, they start losing their authority. The third counter-weapon is developing genuine self-compassion. Not the toxic positivity kind where you pretend everything is wonderful. Real self-compassion. The kind where you treat yourself with the same decency and understanding you would extend to a close friend going through a tough time. Most people talk to themselves in ways they would never tolerate from another person. They hold themselves to standards they would never apply to someone they cared about. They interpret every stumble as proof of some fundamental flaw. Self-compassion means recognizing that struggle is part of being human, that making mistakes is how learning works, that being imperfect is not a character defect, but a universal condition. When you develop genuine compassion for yourself, self-doubt loses its favorite weapon, the ability to make you feel like a failure for being human. Chapter 5. The Presence. Blueprint. How to command any room without saying a word. Here is something that took me a long time to understand. Presence is not about what you say. It is about what you radiate. It is the energy you bring into a space before you open your mouth. It is the reason some people walk into a room and everyone subtly straightens up, not out of fear, but out of some unconscious recognition that someone worth paying attention to just arrived. And most people completely misunderstand what this looks like. They think presence means being the loudest voice, the most aggressive personality, the person who dominates every conversation. But that is not presence. That is compensation. Real presence is quiet. It is centered. It is so secure that it does not need to announce itself. Presence operates on 4 distinct levels, and mastering all 4 is what creates that magnetic quality that draws people in and makes them instinctively trust your authority. The first level is physical presence. This starts with something most people never think about: your relationship with gravity. Watch how most people carry themselves. Shoulders hiked up around their ears, jaw clenched, stomach tight, breathing shallow up in the chest. Their entire body is in a state of low-grade battle readiness, as if they are expecting an attack at any moment. This tension is readable from across the room. It signals defensiveness, anxiety, and a fundamental lack of ease. Now think about someone you know who radiates calm authority. Watch how they carry themselves. Their weight settles into their lower body. Their shoulders drop naturally. Their jaw is relaxed. Their breathing is slow and deep. They move like someone who is completely at home in their own skin. This is not about adopting some rigid power posture. It is about releasing the tension you have been holding probably for years and letting your body find its natural, relaxed alignment. When you do this, something interesting happens. Other people unconsciously read your physical ease as safety. They relax around you. They trust you more. Not because of anything you said, but because your body is communicating. I am not threatened. I am not defensive. I am just here. Eye contact is another crucial element. Most people do one of 2 things with eye contact: avoid it entirely, which signals insecurity, or weaponize it, using it as an aggressive tool of dominance, which signals overcompensation. Confident eye contact is neither of these. It is relaxed, warm, and genuinely engaged. It says, "I see you, and I am interested in what you have to say." The trick is not to think about eye contact as a technique. When you're genuinely focused on understanding someone, truly listening to them, your eyes naturally find the right rhythm. Movement matters too. Confident people move with what I call quiet purpose. Every gesture has intention. There is no fidgeting, no nervous energy leaking out through tapping feet or drumming fingers. There is no jerkiness or abruptness. They move through space like water, smooth, fluid, unhurried. This does not mean being robotic. It means being conscious. It means eliminating the physical noise that broadcasts anxiety to everyone watching. The second level is vocal presence. Your voice communicates an extraordinary amount of information about your internal state, often more than your words do. People make instant, unconscious judgments about your confidence, competence, and authority based purely on how you sound. The foundation of a confident voice is breath support. Most people speak from their throat, which produces a thin, tight sound that unconsciously registers as strained and anxious. When you learn to speak from your diaphragm, to support your voice with deep, grounded breath, the sound that comes out is richer, more resonant, and naturally commands more attention. You do not have to speak louder. You just have to speak from a deeper place. Pace is equally important. When people are nervous, they speed up. They rush through their words like someone trying to get through a toll booth before it closes. They are unconsciously communicating, "I know I am taking up your time. I will be quick. Please do not judge me for this." Confident speakers take their time. They are comfortable with pauses. They understand that silence is not empty space to fill, but a powerful tool for emphasis and connection. When you slow down, you communicate. What I am saying matters, and I am not in a hurry. And then there is tone. A monotone voice puts people to sleep. An overly enthusiastic voice feels forced. A defensive tone makes people bristle. The sweet spot is warm, engaged, and varied. You want to sound like someone who is genuinely interesting and genuinely interested, not someone performing or proving a point. The third level is emotional presence. This is your ability to remain steady and centered, no matter what is happening around you. When you have strong emotional presence, you become an anchor in turbulent situations. Other people's anxiety, anger, or negativity washes over you without destabilizing your internal state. You remain composed while chaos swirls around you. This kind of stability is incredibly rare and incredibly attractive. In a world where most people are emotionally reactive, bouncing from mood to mood based on whatever just happened, someone who remains calm and centered stands out like a lighthouse in a storm. People gravitate toward that stability because it makes them feel safe. Emotional presence develops through consistent practice. Meditation and mindfulness are the most direct paths. You learn to observe your emotions from a slight distance, acknowledging them without being consumed by them. Over time, you develop the capacity to feel anger without acting angry, to feel nervous without appearing rattled, to feel uncertainty without projecting doubt. The fourth level is mental presence. This is about the quality of your attention. When you are with someone and you are truly, completely present with them, it creates a connection that most people rarely experience. Because, let us be honest, most of us are terrible at being present. We are physically in one place, but mentally in three others, thinking about what we are going to say next, checking our mental inbox, replaying a conversation from yesterday. When you learn to be genuinely present, to give someone your complete, undivided attention, the effect is almost magnetic. People feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, and they associate those feelings with you. Mental presence also shows up in the clarity of your thinking. When you are fully present, your thoughts are coherent and organized. You speak with precision. You say what you mean without rambling or contradicting yourself. This kind of mental sharpness signals competence and intelligence, both of which are core components of how others assess your confidence. When all four levels integrate, physical, vocal, emotional, and mental, something remarkable happens. You develop what can only be described as charismatic presence. People are drawn to you without fully understanding why. They trust you instinctively. They listen more carefully when you speak. They naturally defer to your perspective. This kind of presence is not a trick or a performance. It is the authentic expression of someone who has built genuine confidence from the inside out. Chapter 6. Social Influence, Shaping the Dynamics of Any Room. Let us get something straight right at the top. Social influence is not about intimidation. It is not about being the alpha in some chest-thumping primate sense. It is not about making other people feel small so you can feel big. That approach is fragile, exhausting, and ultimately self-defeating. Real social influence is the ability to shape the dynamics of a group through intelligence, presence, and strategic awareness. It is about becoming the person who sets the tone, not by force, but by the sheer weight of your competence, clarity, and calm. The first thing you need to understand is that every social interaction is, whether you realize it or not, a negotiation. People are constantly testing boundaries, reading signals, and positioning themselves relative to others. This is not cynical. It is just how human social dynamics work. We are hierarchy-forming creatures, and our brains are constantly computing where we sit in any given social arrangement. Most people participate in these negotiations on autopilot. They react emotionally to social challenges. They let other people set the terms of the interaction. They absorb whatever energy is in the room instead of contributing their own. And then they wonder why they feel overlooked, underestimated, or taken for granted. Dangerous confidence means you become conscious and intentional about how you participate in social dynamics. You understand the unspoken rules. You see the tests for what they are. You respond strategically rather than reactively. The master skill of social influence is what psychologists call frame control. Your frame is your interpretation of reality, your perspective on what is happening and what it means. In every interaction, multiple frames are competing for dominance. Whoever's frame wins controls the entire dynamic. Here's a simple example. Someone interrupts you during a meeting. That single event can be interpreted through multiple frames. Frame 1. They are being disrespectful. I should be offended. Frame 2. I must not be communicating clearly. I should apologize. Frame 3. They are excited about this topic. I will acknowledge their enthusiasm and continue. The frame you choose determines the entire trajectory of what happens next. Frame 1 puts you in a defensive, adversarial position. Frame 2 puts you in a weak, apologetic position. Frame 3 keeps you in control while being gracious. Strong frame control means never letting someone else's behavior dictate your interpretation of reality. If someone is rude to you, you do not automatically assume you did something wrong. You maintain your frame that you deserve basic respect, and you respond from that position. If someone challenges your ideas, you do not immediately doubt yourself. You consider their perspective with genuine openness while maintaining confidence in your own thinking. This is not about being stubborn or dismissive. It is about being anchored. It is the difference between a tree that bends in the wind and a building that gets knocked over. You can be flexible and responsive while remaining fundamentally stable. The second principle of social influence is strategic positioning. Every social environment has positions that naturally carry more influence and positions that carry less. Where you position yourself physically, socially, and psychologically determines how much weight your words and actions carry. Physically, this means being conscious of where you place yourself in a room. In meetings, it means sitting where you can see everyone and everyone can see you, not hiding in the corner or behind a laptop. In social gatherings, it means positioning yourself near the natural center of activity, where conversations naturally flow rather than on the periphery. Socially, it means becoming someone who consistently adds value to every interaction. You become known as the person with sharp insights, useful connections, or the ability to cut through confusion and clarify what matters. You do not try to be the center of attention, but you make every interaction better by being part of it. Psychologically, it means occupying a position of relaxed authority. You do not need anyone's approval, but you are genuinely interested in others. You are not invested in being right about everything, but you are confident in your ability to think clearly. You do not need to control situations, but you're comfortable stepping into leadership when it is needed. The third principle is intentional communication. Every word you speak sends signals about your status, competence, and confidence. Most people communicate reactively, saying whatever pops into their head without considering the signals they are sending. Intentional communication means being aware of what your words, tone, and timing are communicating beyond their literal meaning. This does not mean being calculating or inauthentic. It means being thoughtful. It means pausing before you speak. It means choosing words that accurately represent your thoughts. It means understanding that how you say something often matters more than what you say. A confident tone paired with concise language communicates authority. A tentative tone paired with excessive qualifiers communicates insecurity. Same information, completely different impact. Timing is another dimension of communication mastery. Knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet is a high-level skill. Sometimes the most powerful response to a provocation is no response at all. Sometimes the best way to maintain your position is simply to let the silence do the heavy lifting. People who are insecure fill every silence with words. People who are confident are comfortable with pauses because they are not afraid of empty space. The fourth principle is emotional independence. True social influence requires that your internal state is not held hostage by other people's reactions. If your confidence evaporates the moment someone frowns at you, or soars the moment someone praises you, you are not confident. You are dependent, and dependence is the opposite of influence. Emotional independence means being genuinely unshaken by criticism, rejection, or disapproval, not because you are cold or disconnected, but because your sense of self is anchored in something deeper than other people's momentary reactions. You can appreciate positive feedback without needing it. You can handle negative feedback without crumbling. You can be empathetic toward others without absorbing their emotional weather. This develops through practice, through consistently choosing not to take things personally, through reminding yourself that other people's behavior almost always reflects their own internal landscape, not your worth, through gradually building a sense of self that does not require external validation to stay standing. The highest expression of social influence is not domination. It is elevation. The most influential people I have ever observed are not the ones who push others down. They are the ones who lift others up while naturally becoming the person everyone looks to for guidance. They make the people around them feel smarter, more capable, and more valued. And paradoxically, this generosity of spirit is exactly what makes their influence so powerful and durable. Chapter 7. Building Psychological Armor Without Becoming a Fortress. Here is a truth about life that nobody can escape. People will try to knock you down. It might be subtle, a backhanded compliment at a dinner party, a passive-aggressive email from a colleague. Or it might be blunt, outright criticism, public humiliation, deliberate sabotage. Either way, how you handle these moments determines whether your confidence hardens into something unbreakable or shatters like cheap glass. Most people have zero defense against psychological attacks. They absorb every criticism like a sponge. They let one negative comment ruin an entire week. They replay harsh words on a mental loop until they have memorized every syllable. And each time they do, their confidence chips away a little more. Dangerous confidence requires building what I think of as psychological armor. But here is the critical nuance. This armor is not a wall. It is not about shutting down emotionally or becoming cold and unreachable. It is about developing such a solid core of self-knowledge and self-worth that external negativity bounces off without reaching the parts that matter. The first step in building this armor is understanding why people attack in the first place. And the answer might surprise you. People who tear others down are almost always operating from their own fear, insecurity, or pain. Truly confident, secure, fulfilled people do not need to diminish others. They do not waste energy criticizing and attacking because they are too busy building their own life. When someone takes a shot at you, what they are really showing you is a window into their own inner turmoil. They might feel threatened by your growth. They might be projecting their own self-hatred onto you. They might just be having a terrible day, and you happen to be standing in the blast radius. Understanding this is not about excusing bad behavior. It is about recognizing that the attack says everything about the attacker and almost nothing about you. When you truly internalize this, criticism loses its sting. Not because you stop feeling it, but because you stop interpreting it as evidence about your worth. The next step is learning to sort incoming criticism into two distinct categories. The first is genuine feedback, specific, constructive, and delivered by someone who actually cares about your growth. Your presentation was strong overall, but the financial projection section needed clearer data visualization is feedback. It is specific, actionable, and focused on improvement. The second is a disguised attack, vague, personal, and motivated by the attacker's own issues. You always mess things up, or who do you think you are, is not feedback. It is emotional shrapnel. Learning to tell the difference between these two is one of the most important skills you will ever develop. When you receive genuine feedback, you lean in. You listen. Carefully extract what is useful and use it to get better. When you face a disguised attack, you recognize it for what it is and refuse to carry its weight. Building psychological armor also means developing what I call cognitive immunity. This is your ability to evaluate incoming information objectively rather than swallowing it whole. Most people have no filter. If someone says something negative about them, they accept it as truth immediately, especially if the comment activates a pre-existing insecurity. Cognitive immunity means pausing before you internalize anything. You ask, is this person qualified to judge this particular area of my life? Do they have context? Do they have my best interests in mind? Is what they are saying specific and based on evidence, or vague and driven by emotion? This is not about being defensive or dismissing all criticism. It is about being discerning. It is about only allowing feedback that passes a basic quality filter to reach your core sense of self and letting the rest slide off. Emotional detachment from outcomes is another essential layer of armor. This means caring deeply about your effort and preparation while remaining unattached to specific results. You show up fully, you give your best, and then you release the outcome, understanding that factors beyond your control always play a role and that no single result defines your worth. This is one of the hardest shifts to make, especially in a culture that worships results. But consider this. If your confidence only survives when things go well, it is not confidence. It is a fair-weather friend. Real psychological armor means your sense of self remains intact, whether you are winning or losing, whether the crowd is cheering or silent. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is learning to view adversity as training rather than punishment. Think of it like a gym for your mind. Every criticism, every rejection, every challenge is a rep that builds psychological muscle. The person who tries to tear you down is unknowingly giving you a free workout. The rejection that stings? It is building your disappointment handling capacity. The failure that burns? It is forcing you to develop adaptability and resilience. When you start seeing adversity through this lens, something incredible happens. You stop avoiding difficult situations and start welcoming them. Not because you enjoy pain, but because you understand that the resistance is making you stronger. You seek out challenges the way a weightlifter seeks out heavier plates, knowing that the temporary discomfort is the price of lasting strength. Finally, diversify your sources of self-worth. If your entire sense of confidence rests on one pillar, your job, your relationship, your appearance, your accomplishments, you're one bad day away from collapse. When that single pillar shakes, your entire identity shakes with it. The solution is to build your self-worth on multiple foundations: your character, your values, your growth, your relationships, your contributions, your skills across different areas. When one area faces a challenge, you have others to lean on. Your sense of self remains stable because it is distributed across many pillars, not balanced precariously on one. Chapter 8. Performing when everything is on the line. Here is where dangerous confidence really earns its name, because anyone can feel confident when things are easy. Anyone can feel self-assured in comfortable, familiar, low-stakes situations. The real test is what happens when the pressure spikes, when the spotlight hits, when the outcome genuinely matters, and failure is a real possibility. For most people, high-pressure situations are where confidence goes to die. Their palms sweat, their thoughts scatter, their voice tightens. Everything they rehearsed evaporates the moment the stakes get real. They know what they know. They have prepared thoroughly. But when the moment arrives, their nervous system hijacks the show, and all that preparation becomes inaccessible. Understanding why this happens is the first step to changing it. When pressure increases, your brain activates the same ancient survival responses that kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. Stress hormones flood your system. Your heart pounds. Your breathing goes shallow. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for complex thinking and eloquent communication, starts to dim. You're being pushed into survival mode, which is great for outrunning a predator, but terrible for delivering a compelling quarterly report. But here is the crucial insight that changes everything. The physiological experience of anxiety and the physiological experience of excitement are almost identical. Same racing heart, same heightened alertness, same surge of energy. The only difference is the label you put on it. This is not just motivational fluff. This is backed by hard research. When you interpret your body's arousal as anxiety, your performance drops. When you interpret the exact same arousal as excitement, your performance actually improves. The physical sensations do not change. Only the story changes, and the story changes everything. So the first principle of performing under pressure is deliberate reinterpretation. When you feel your heart hammering before a big moment, instead of thinking, "I am so nervous, something is going to go wrong," you consciously redirect. "My body is getting ready to perform. This energy is going to help me, not hurt me." Practice this enough, and it becomes automatic. Your relationship with pressure flips from adversarial to collaborative. The second principle is learning to access what athletes call the flow state. This is that rare and beautiful zone where you are so completely absorbed in what you're doing that self-consciousness disappears, time warps, and performance becomes almost effortless. In the flow state, doubt does not exist. Fear does not exist. There is only you and the task, perfectly fused. The flow state has specific conditions you can cultivate. You need clear goals, so you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. You need immediate feedback, so you can adjust in real time. And you need a challenge level that is matched to your skill level, not so easy that you are bored, not so hard that you are overwhelmed, but right at that sweet spot where everything clicks. The third principle is the kind of preparation that actually works under pressure. Most people prepare by memorizing. They learn their lines, rehearse specific responses, and try to predict exactly what will happen so they can have a preloaded answer for everything. This approach actually increases anxiety because it makes you rigid. The moment something unexpected happens, your script becomes useless and your confidence collapses. Effective preparation is about building adaptive capability rather than memorizing specific responses. Instead of rehearsing exactly what you will say in a presentation, you become so deeply knowledgeable about your topic that you can discuss it fluently from any angle. Instead of preparing for specific interview questions, you develop such clarity about your experience and value that you can handle any question thrown your way. This kind of preparation builds what psychologists call self-efficacy, genuine confidence in your ability to handle whatever comes up. You are not confident because you predicted every possible scenario. You are confident because you know you can navigate any scenario that arises. The fourth principle is breath control, and I cannot overstate how foundational this is. Your breath is literally the remote control for your nervous system. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you activate the calm, clear thinking part of your nervous system. When you breathe quickly and shallowly, you activate the stress and panic part. Most people completely abandon their breathing when pressure increases. They let it become rapid and shallow, which amplifies everything they are trying to avoid. Racing thoughts, physical tension, cloudy thinking. Learning to control your breath under pressure is like discovering you have had a superpower all along that you just never bothered to use. The technique is simple. Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 counts. The extended exhale is key because it specifically activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the one responsible for calm, collected, peak performance. Do this 3 to 5 times before any high-pressure moment, and you will feel a tangible shift in your state. The fifth principle is maintaining big-picture thinking even when your emotions want to shrink your world to the size of the immediate crisis. Pressure creates tunnel vision. You become so focused on what is happening right now that you lose sight of your broader strategy, your long-term goals, and the larger context of the situation. Resisting this tunnel vision requires deliberately stepping back, even just for a few seconds, and asking, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? What are my real options? What would a calm, strategic person do right now? This mental zoom out prevents you from getting trapped in reactive mode and keeps you operating from a place of clarity and intention. The final principle is something that separates truly great performers from everyone else. They do not try to avoid pressure. They seek it out. They understand that pressure is not the enemy of performance. Pressure is the fuel. It is the signal that you are in a moment that matters, and the energy it produces, if channeled properly, is what pushes you beyond your normal limits into territory you did not know you could reach. Great athletes do not pray for easy games. Great speakers do not hope for small audiences. Great leaders do not wish for simple problems. They all understand the same thing. Pressure is the forge where extraordinary performance is created. And the confidence that comes from thriving under pressure, that is the kind of confidence nobody can take from you. Chapter 9. Building self-worth that cannot be shaken by circumstance. Here is a question that most people never stop to honestly answer. Where does your confidence actually come from? If you trace it back to its roots, what is it built on? For most people, the honest answer reveals a terrifying vulnerability. Their confidence is built on external scaffolding, their job title, their income, their relationship status, their physical appearance, how many likes their last post got, what their colleagues think of them, and as long as everything is going well, this feels solid enough. The problem is that every single one of those things can change overnight. A job loss, a breakup, an illness that changes your appearance, a market shift that wipes out your savings, a failure that becomes public knowledge. When any of these external pillars gets knocked out, the confidence built on it crumbles too. You are left standing in the rubble, wondering who you even are, without the thing that was making you feel worthy. This is why dangerous confidence must be built from the inside out, on a foundation that external circumstances cannot touch. It has to come from who you are, not from what you have, from your character, not your credentials, from your relationship with yourself, not your relationship status. The first pillar of unshakable self-worth is separating your identity from your outcomes. You are not your last victory, and you are not your last defeat. You are not your job title or your bank balance. These are circumstances, temporary chapters in a much longer story. They can change, and they will change, and your fundamental worth needs to remain steady through all of it. This requires developing what psychologists call outcome independence. You care about results deeply, but you do not derive your identity from them. You can be devastated by a failure without questioning your fundamental value. You can be thrilled by a success without letting it define you. You learn to evaluate yourself on the quality of your effort, the integrity of your process, and whether you showed up as the person you want to be, not just on whether the scoreboard reads in your favor. The second pillar is unconditional self-acceptance. And let me be clear about what this means, because it is often misunderstood. It does not mean accepting mediocrity or stopping growth. It means accepting yourself right now as you are, flaws and all, while simultaneously working toward who you want to become. Think of it this way. A good parent loves their child completely, even when the child makes mistakes, misbehaves, or falls short. The love is not conditional on perfect performance, but that unconditional love does not mean the parent stops encouraging growth. It just means the child knows, deep in their bones, that their worth is not at stake when they stumble. You need to become that parent for yourself. You need to know at the deepest level that your worth as a human being is not a variable that fluctuates with your performance. It is a constant. This does not make you complacent. If anything, it makes you braver. When failure does not threaten your fundamental worth, you are free to take bigger risks, try bolder things, and push into territory that would terrify someone whose entire identity depends on getting it right. The third pillar is clarifying and living according to your personal values. Values are the internal compass that tells you who you are and what you stand for, independent of external approval or circumstance. When you live in alignment with your values, you feel a deep sense of integrity and authenticity. When you violate them, you feel fragmented and anxious, even if nobody else notices. Most people have never clearly identified what they actually value. They drift through life making decisions based on whatever feels convenient, whatever others expect, or whatever creates the least friction. This creates a chronic sense of being unmoored, of not quite knowing who you are or what you stand for. And that uncertainty is a breeding ground for insecurity. Take the time to get clear about your values, not what society says you should value, not what your parents or peers expect you to value, what you actually, genuinely, in the quiet of your own heart, believe matters most. Integrity, growth, connection, creativity, freedom, service, adventure. Once you know what these are, align your daily decisions with them. Say no to things that violate them. Say yes to things that honor them, even when it is harder. When you live according to your values, you develop an internal steadiness that does not depend on anyone else's approval. You know who you are. You know what you stand for, and that knowledge is worth more than 1,000 compliments from strangers. The fourth pillar is intrinsic motivation, the ability to find drive and satisfaction from within rather than from external rewards. When your motivation comes from genuine interest, personal growth, and meaningful contribution, your confidence becomes self-sustaining. You do not need the promotion, the trophy, or the applause to feel worthy. You feel worthy because you are doing work that matters to you, growing in directions that align with your values, and contributing to something larger than yourself. The fifth pillar is anti-fragility. Most people are fragile. Adversity weakens them. Some are resilient. They bounce back to baseline after hardship. But the highest level is anti-fragile, actually becoming stronger through difficulty. Like a bone that rebuilds thicker after a fracture, you learn to use every setback, rejection, and failure as raw material for growth. You develop anti-fragility by changing your relationship with struggle itself. Instead of something to be avoided, struggle becomes something to be harvested. Every hard experience teaches you something, reveals a weakness you can strengthen, or forces an adaptation that makes you more capable than before. The final pillar is presence, the ability to be fully alive in this moment rather than lost in regrets about the past or anxiety about the future. Self-doubt is a time traveler. It lives in memories of past failures and projections of future disasters. It almost never exists in the present moment. When you are truly here, right now, fully engaged with whatever is in front of you, self-doubt loses its foothold. This is why mindfulness and meditation are not just wellness buzzwords. They are confidence technologies. They train you to stay rooted in the only moment where confidence actually exists. This one. Chapter 10. Fortifying Your Mind. Building Psychology That Does Not Break. Building dangerous confidence is not a weekend project. It is not something you complete and then put on a shelf. It is an ongoing process of strengthening your psychological infrastructure until it can withstand anything life throws at it without fracturing. Think of it like building a skyscraper. The taller you want to go, the deeper the foundation needs to reach. And the foundation we are building here goes deep. Mental fortification is not about becoming some emotionless robot who floats through life untouched by anything. That is not strength. That is numbness. Real mental strength means you feel everything fully, but nothing controls you. You experience disappointment without becoming discouraged. You feel fear without becoming paralyzed. You face uncertainty without becoming unraveled. The first element of this fortification is psychological flexibility. This is your ability to adapt your thinking and behavior to changing conditions while keeping your core identity and values intact. Most people are surprisingly rigid in how they approach problems. They have one way of thinking, one set of strategies, one playbook, and when that playbook fails, they are lost. Psychologically flexible people are different. They treat problems like puzzles, approaching from different angles, testing different solutions, adapting quickly when something is not working. If one strategy fails, they shift to another without losing confidence or becoming frustrated. They are curious rather than threatened when they encounter something that challenges their existing understanding. You develop this flexibility by deliberately seeking out diverse experiences and perspectives. Travel to unfamiliar places, read books by people you disagree with, have deep conversations with people whose backgrounds are completely different from yours. The more varied your mental library, the more adaptable you become. The second element is expanding your stress capacity. Think of your stress tolerance like a container. Some people have a small glass that overflows with the slightest splash. Others have a barrel that can absorb enormous amounts of pressure without spilling. The size of your container is not fixed. You can expand it deliberately. This happens through the same principle as building physical fitness, progressive overload. You gradually expose yourself to increasing levels of challenge and pressure, always staying just at the edge of your current capacity. Too little challenge and you do not grow. Too much and you risk breaking down instead of building up. Start with situations that create manageable discomfort. Have a slightly difficult conversation. Take on a project that is a stretch but not overwhelming. Speak up in a meeting when you would normally stay quiet. As these become routine, raise the bar slightly. Each time you handle more pressure than before, your capacity expands. The third element is what I think of as existential confidence. This is deeper than confidence in any particular skill or situation. It is confidence in your fundamental ability to create meaning and purpose regardless of what is happening around you. Most people derive their sense of purpose from their circumstances, their job, their relationships, their achievements. And when those circumstances change, their entire sense of direction vanishes. Existential confidence means knowing that you can find or create meaning no matter what. It means understanding that purpose is not something you discover like a buried treasure. It is something you build, like a fire, from whatever materials are available. This kind of confidence is especially crucial during transitions, setbacks, and periods of uncertainty when the external structures that usually provide direction have fallen away. The fourth element is what positive psychologists call realistic optimism. This is not about putting on rose-colored glasses and pretending everything is wonderful. It is about developing specific thinking patterns that support resilience without distorting reality. When something goes wrong, A realistic optimist sees the setback as temporary rather than permanent, specific rather than all-encompassing, and influenced by many factors rather than entirely their fault. When something goes right, they see it as a reflection of their capabilities rather than a fluke, as something that can happen again rather than a one-time miracle. These thinking patterns are not just feel-good exercises. Decades of research show they lead to better performance, better health, better relationships, and dramatically better resilience. They are not about ignoring reality. They are about interpreting reality in ways that fuel forward motion rather than stagnation. The fifth element is equanimity, the ability to remain balanced and centered whether life is handing you roses or thorns. This is about being fully engaged with experience while maintaining an even emotional keel. You can enjoy success without becoming addicted to it. You can learn from failure without being devastated by it. You appreciate the peaks without clinging to them and navigate the valleys without drowning in them. Equanimity develops primarily through meditation and mindfulness. Through consistent practice, you learn to observe your emotional reactions from a slight distance. You notice joy arising without grasping at it. You notice frustration arising without being swept away by it. Over time, you develop what can only be described as weatherproof confidence, the capacity to remain fundamentally steady regardless of what emotional climate you find yourself in. The final element is philosophical confidence. This is confidence in your overall approach to life, in the values and principles that guide your decisions, and in your understanding of what truly matters. When you have philosophical confidence, you're not easily swayed by trends, popular opinion, or the constantly shifting winds of social media consensus. You have thought deeply about what you believe and why. You have arrived at your own conclusions about how to live, and those conclusions provide a steady compass that keeps you on course even when the world around you seems chaotic. Developing this requires real introspection, not just casual self-reflection, but deep, honest examination of your beliefs, assumptions, and priorities. What do you actually believe about success, about relationships, about what makes a life meaningful, not what Instagram tells you to believe? What do you believe when you strip away all the noise? When all these elements come together, you develop something that goes beyond ordinary confidence. You become someone who can take a punch from life and not just stay standing, but use the force of the blow to move forward. You become someone whose psychology does not just survive challenges, but actively metabolizes them into fuel for growth. Chapter 11. Understanding People, the Hidden Language of Human Behavior. The highest level of confidence comes from understanding people so deeply that social interactions stop being sources of anxiety and start becoming sources of energy and opportunity. When you can read the unwritten rules of human behavior, when you can decode what people really want and need beneath the surface of what they say, the social uncertainty that breeds most insecurity simply dissolves. Human behavior, despite its apparent complexity, follows remarkably predictable patterns rooted in a handful of fundamental psychological needs. Once you understand these patterns, people become less mysterious and more navigable, not in a manipulative way, but in the way that understanding how a river flows helps you paddle it with skill and respect rather than being tossed around by currents you cannot see. The first and perhaps most powerful human need is significance. Every single person on this planet wants to feel like they matter. They want to feel seen, valued, and respected. This need is so deep and so universal that it drives an astonishing amount of human behavior, often invisibly. When you understand this, you gain a remarkable tool for navigating any social situation. When you make people feel significant, genuinely valued, and acknowledged, they naturally warm to you, they trust you, they want to be around you. They become more open, more cooperative, more generous. This is not flattery or manipulation. It is genuine recognition of another person's value. And it costs you nothing. Conversely, when you threaten someone's sense of significance, even accidentally, they become defensive, hostile, and closed off. This is why traditional dominance tactics, the ones based on making yourself look better by making others feel worse, almost always backfire. You might win the moment, but you lose the relationship. The art of advanced social intelligence is making others feel significant while naturally and authentically demonstrating your own competence and confidence. This is not a zero-sum game. In fact, the more you elevate others, the more they naturally elevate you in return. The second fundamental need is certainty. Humans are deeply, almost desperately, uncomfortable with uncertainty. We need to feel like we understand what is happening and what is going to happen next. This need for predictability makes people remarkably predictable themselves. When facing uncertainty, people default to familiar patterns. They look for authority figures who seem to know what they are doing. They gravitate toward anyone who projects calm clarity in the midst of confusion. This is an enormous opportunity for someone with dangerous confidence. You do not need to have all the answers. You just need to project genuine confidence in your ability to figure things out. When everyone else is flustered and directionless, you remain composed and clear. When complexity overwhelms others, you simplify. When options paralyze people, you provide direction. This is leadership distilled to its essence, being a source of clarity and stability when others feel lost. The third fundamental need is connection. We are wired for it. We need to feel understood, accepted, and valued by other humans. This need shapes virtually all of our social behavior and creates patterns that, once you understand them, become powerful tools for building trust and rapport. People feel most connected to others who genuinely understand them. This goes beyond surface-level agreement. It means understanding someone's underlying values, motivations, and worldview, and communicating in ways that resonate with those deeper layers. This happens through what psychologists call attunement, the ability to sense what someone is feeling and thinking, and to respond in a way that makes them feel truly seen. Attunement is not about mimicking body language or parroting someone's words back to them. It is about genuinely tuning in to another person's frequency and letting them know, through your words and your energy, that you understand their experience. When you develop the ability to genuinely connect with different types of people, each with their own communication styles, values, and emotional needs, you become someone who can navigate virtually any social landscape with ease and confidence. The fourth fundamental need is growth and contribution. People need to feel like they are moving forward, developing, becoming more than they were. They also need to feel like they are contributing to something meaningful beyond themselves. This need creates natural opportunities for influence, because people are deeply drawn to those who can help them grow or provide channels for meaningful contribution. When you position yourself as someone who genuinely cares about others' development, and who creates opportunities for meaningful work and connection, you become someone people want in their lives. Not because you have power over them, but because you are a catalyst for their growth. This must be authentic. People can detect fake interest in their well-being almost instantly. But when your investment in others' growth is genuine, when you actually care about helping the people around you become better, the bonds you create are extraordinarily strong, and the influence you gain is lasting. Understanding these four core needs gives you a map of human motivation that applies across cultures, personality types, and situations. When someone is being difficult, you can usually trace their behavior back to one of these needs not being met. Address the underlying need, and the difficult behavior often resolves on its own. There are also broader dynamics worth understanding. Social proof, the tendency for people to look to others for cues about how to behave. Authority dynamics, the automatic deference people show to perceived experts and leaders. Reciprocity, the deep psychological impulse to return favors and generosity in kind. The most powerful combination of authority, and the one most relevant to dangerous confidence, is expert. Authority paired with moral authority. When people see you as both genuinely competent and genuinely trustworthy, they do not just respect you, they champion you. They seek your counsel, they advocate for your ideas, they follow your lead not because they have to, but because they want to. Building this requires two things that must be maintained consistently: demonstrable expertise and unwavering integrity. You must be genuinely good at what you do, and your actions must consistently match your words. Any gap between what you claim to stand for and how you actually behave erodes your credibility faster than almost anything else. Mastering the dynamics of human behavior does not make you a manipulator. It makes you fluent in the language of connection and influence. And that fluency is one of the most powerful foundations for lasting, unshakable confidence you will ever build. Chapter 12. The Momentum Engine: How to Build Progress That Cannot Be Stopped. Let me share something with you that separates people who actually transform their confidence from people who read about it and stay the same. It is not knowledge. It is not motivation. It is not even talent. It is momentum. The ability to build forward motion and maintain it regardless of what life throws in your path. Momentum is the compound interest of personal development. Small, consistent actions that build on each other over time until the cumulative effect is staggering. And just like compound interest, most people never benefit from it because they cannot maintain consistency long enough for the magic to kick in. Here is why. Most people misunderstand what momentum actually is. They think it requires motivation. They think they need to feel inspired, energized, and fired up before they can take action. So they wait. They wait for the perfect morning, the perfect mood, the perfect alignment of stars. And they wait themselves right into stagnation. Real momentum does not run on motivation. It runs on systems. It runs on habits and structures that function regardless of how you feel on any given day. The days you feel like conquering the world and the days you feel like pulling the covers over your head, the system runs the same. The foundation of momentum is understanding what consistency does to your brain. Your brain is constantly collecting evidence about who you are and what you're capable of. Every action you take is a vote cast for a particular identity. When you consistently show up and do the work, Your brain starts to see you as someone who follows through, someone who keeps commitments, someone who achieves goals. This creates a positive identity that makes future action easier and more natural. The flip side is equally powerful. Every time you break a commitment to yourself, every time you skip the thing you said you would do, your brain files it as evidence of unreliability. Over time, this creates a negative identity that makes positive action feel unnatural and difficult. You start expecting yourself to quit because quitting has become your pattern. The insight that changes everything is this: momentum is built through small, consistent actions, not dramatic, heroic gestures. Most people try to build momentum through massive efforts. They sign up for an extreme fitness challenge. They commit to waking up at 4 a.m. every day. They try to overhaul their entire life in a single week. These approaches fail almost universally because they are unsustainable. And when they inevitably collapse, the failure reinforces the exact identity you were trying to change. The antidote is what researchers call marginal gains, small, sustainable improvements that you can maintain day after day, week after week, month after month. Instead of an hour of meditation, 5 minutes every morning. Instead of reading a book a week, 10 pages a day. Instead of a complete diet overhaul, replacing one unhealthy habit with one healthy one each week. These changes feel almost ridiculously small, and that is precisely why they work. They are easy enough to maintain even on your worst days, and each day you maintain them, you cast another vote for the identity of someone who follows through. The compound effect over a year is extraordinary. 10 pages a day is over 15 books a year. 5 minutes of meditation daily is over 30 hours of mindfulness practice annually. One small dietary change per week is 52 improvements over a year. But the real power is psychological. Each small win builds evidence that you're someone who achieves what they set out to achieve. This evidence builds confidence, which makes bigger goals feel more attainable, which drives bigger actions, which creates bigger wins. You have built what systems thinkers call a positive feedback loop, a self-reinforcing cycle where progress breeds more progress. The second principle of unstoppable momentum is creating activities that generate multiple returns simultaneously. Exercise does not just build physical health, it improves mental clarity, emotional resilience, sleep quality, and self-image. Reading does not just increase knowledge, it sharpens thinking, expands vocabulary, and broadens perspective. Deep relationships do not just provide companionship, they create accountability, new opportunities, and emotional support. When you focus your daily actions on these high-leverage activities, each investment of time and energy pays dividends across multiple dimensions of your life. Progress accelerates because you are improving several things at once, rather than just one. The third principle is what I think of as trajectory resilience. This is the ability to maintain your overall direction even when individual steps go sideways. Not every day will be a win. Not every strategy will work. Not every project will succeed. This is normal and expected. The key is not letting individual setbacks disrupt your overall trajectory. When something does not work, you extract the lesson, adjust your approach, and keep moving. You do not spiral into self-doubt. You do not question your entire direction because of one stumble. You maintain the big picture view that occasional setbacks are just turbulence on a flight that is still heading in the right direction. The fourth principle is managing energy, not just time. Most productivity advice focuses on time management, how to squeeze more activities into fewer hours. But the real bottleneck is rarely time. It is energy. Physical energy from sleep, nutrition, and movement. Mental energy from focused work and learning. Emotional energy from meaningful relationships and purposeful activities. Creative energy from novelty and inspiration. Building unstoppable momentum means optimizing all forms of energy and matching your most important work to your peak energy periods. Instead of grinding through important tasks when you are depleted, you schedule them for when you are sharp and save routine tasks for your lower energy periods. The fifth principle is environmental design. Your surroundings have an enormous, often invisible, influence on your behavior. When your environment supports positive habits, momentum builds naturally. When it creates friction against the behaviors you want, momentum becomes a constant uphill battle. Design your physical space to make good behaviors easy and bad behaviors hard. Remove the distractions. Prepare your tools in advance. Surround yourself with people who are moving in the direction you want to go. Create what behavioral scientists call choice architecture, structures that make the right decision, the default decision, rather than the heroic decision. The final principle is celebrating the process, not just the destination. Most people only acknowledge success when they hit major milestones. This means they go months or even years without any positive reinforcement for the daily habits that are actually creating their transformation. This is a recipe for abandonment. Start celebrating every kept commitment. Every morning you show up for your practice, every difficult conversation you do not avoid, every page you read, every rep you complete, every small step forward, not with elaborate rewards, but with simple acknowledgement. I said I would, and I did. This creates a positive emotional association with the very behaviors that build momentum, and the stronger that association becomes, the more automatic those behaviors become. Chapter 13. Fear Alchemy, Turning Terror into Rocket Fuel. Let me leave you with what might be the single most transformative idea in this entire system. Fear is not your opponent. It never was. Fear is raw, unprocessed energy, and the only thing that determines whether it destroys you or propels you is what you do with it. The people who achieve dangerous confidence are not the ones who feel the least fear. They are the ones who feel it intensely and have learned to transmute that intensity into fuel for extraordinary action. They understand something fundamental. Fear shows up when something important is at stake. If nothing mattered, you would never feel afraid. Fear is your psyche pointing a spotlight at exactly the things worth doing. Fear is information. It tells you where your growth edge is. The things that scare you most are almost always the things that would transform your life most profoundly if you did them. Fear is also energy. The same adrenaline surge that makes your hands shake and your stomach flip is the same chemical cocktail that athletes ride to break world records and performers channel into breathtaking shows. The transformation begins with a simple but radical reframe. The next time you feel that familiar surge before a big moment, instead of labeling it as terror, label it as fuel. Instead of trying to calm down, try channeling up. Use that heightened state to sharpen your focus, deepen your preparation, and intensify your commitment. Start small. Expose yourself to situations that create mild discomfort and practice staying present with the sensations instead of running from them. Each time you move through fear instead of away from it, you collect evidence that you can handle more than you thought. Your tolerance grows, your confidence deepens, and gradually, the things that once paralyzed you become the things that energize you. Find something to fight for that is bigger than your comfort. When your purpose is larger than your fear, the equation changes. You stop asking, "Will this be scary?" and start asking, "Is this worth being scared for?" And when the answer is yes, fear becomes irrelevant. Not absent, irrelevant. This is the final piece of the puzzle. Dangerous confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of purpose so strong that fear becomes background noise. It is knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you are building with such clarity that no amount of uncertainty, pressure, or criticism can knock you off course. You are not the same person who started reading this. Something has already shifted. The myths have been dismantled. The science has been laid bare. The system has been revealed. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. So here is my challenge to you. Do not wait until you feel ready, because that day does not exist. Start today. Start with one small act of courage, one uncomfortable conversation, one risk you have been avoiding, one boundary you have been afraid to set. Let the momentum begin with a single brave step, and trust the process to carry you forward from there. Dangerous confidence is not a destination you arrive at. It is a way of moving through the world. It is the ongoing practice of building competence, sharpening awareness, mastering your emotions, and transforming fear into forward motion. It is waking up every day and choosing growth over comfort, action over avoidance, and presence over pretense. And when you commit to this path, not perfectly, not without stumbles, but consistently, something remarkable happens. Confidence stops being something you chase and becomes something you embody. It becomes so woven into who you are that you no longer think about it. You just live it. And everyone around you feels it. That is dangerous confidence, and it is already yours. You just have to go claim it.